because Bruce Timm can't create anything. All he can do is gender flip the Penguin and go, oh, maybe she's in cabaret, for another one of his barely disguised fetishes. And if you want to talk about Bruce Timm's barely disguised fetishes, let's talk about the fact that the entire time that he was on Batman the Animated Series, many, many people have talked about how he had an obsession with making Bruce bang Barbara, the young teenage daughter of his best friend.
There's a lot of talk about the Caped Crusader and the gender swap Penguin and all that kind of stuff. And me personally, I cannot tell you whether it's a good show, whether it's a good companion to Batman the Animated Series or any of that stuff, because I don't have HBO Max and I'm quite frankly not interested in the cartoon. But what I am interested in is the words recently of Bruce Timm, who a lot of people associate with the success of Batman the Animated Series. But a good friend of mine named Aaron Sparrow has asserted all along that it was never Bruce Timm, that it was all fully Paul Dini's work that should be admired. And I think that's coming out as true, Aaron.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely, you just need to look at the output of Bruce Timm without Paul Dini, and you can see what he puts out versus, what was put out before. So I think it's become fairly obvious. And, obviously, Paul worked with a lot of great people on the show. There's Glenn Murakami, who, I've heard credited by several people who worked on the show with more of the art style. They've given him more credit for the direction of the art style than Bruce Timm. And I certainly don't want to take anything away from Bruce Timm as an artist. I love his style. I love whenever I see a drawing from him. But as a person, I don't think very much of him. And as a creator that gets the amount of credit that he does for the Batman animated series, I think that he is wholly overrated, and that is overstated in almost every time it comes up.
One of the biggest talking points surrounding Batman Caped Crusader was the gender flipping of the Penguin. Often portrayed as a diminutive, gruesome-looking gangster, the villain was reinvented in the Prime Video animated series as a body show-stopping cabaret artist moonlighting as the head of a criminal organization. Caped Crusader's Penguin then was a result of creator Bruce Timm and executive producer James Tucker working at rounding out Batman's Rogues Gallery. So Bruce Timm is the reason that this happened. We'll get to some of his quotes there. But this is a Bruce Timm idea. This is a Bruce Timm creation. And the idea that you actually had to round out Batman's Rogues Gallery is absolutely false. But this is Bruce Timm. It's not Paul Dini. And that's probably why nobody likes it.
Yeah, it's, nothing that he's done. Look at the Batman and Harley animated movie. Look at the stuff that's come out that he's overseen. It's all been hot garbage. None of it has even lived up to in the words of Joker from the animated series, it's not fit to brush the dust off his spats. And that's how it is with these new cartoons that Bruce Timm is in charge of. They're not worthy of even dusting off the spats of the Batman animated series, the New Adventures of Batman, all the way into Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. I always, I know that Dwayne McDuffie worked on the Justice Leagues, but all of that I think stems from what people have rightly called for years the Diniverse. And only in more recent years have they started to add Bruce Timm to that list.
Whether you like gender flip Penguin, I do have to come away going, why? And if you were going to gender flip Penguin, why isn't the Penguin just still a crime boss? That's what the Penguin is. He's the Penguin because he wears a suit and looks like a penguin, because he's wearing a tuxedo or whatever. But now he's a cabaret, show tune singer? That makes no sense in the world.
Well, that's just a Bruce Timmism. Remember, he had Harley have that whole, singing telephone or whatever in the Harley Ivy movie, too. He just likes it when characters sing. He likes that whole musical aspect. He likes to throw that in, whether it's appropriate or whether it makes sense for the character or not. Yeah, you're going to get different versions of the characters from iteration to iteration, but I think it's just one of those ones that's just absolutely misguided, doesn't work, doesn't make sense, and that people were destined not to like. It's just too radical and too stupid a departure. You can get away with a radical departure if the idea ultimately works, if it ends up being good. But, when it's like, oh, we're going to make her a cabaret singer and all these gangsters are going to be waving dollar bills and it's just stupid. It comes across as dumb and contrived and lazy and just something that's, the writer's barely disguised fetish.
Do you think that J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot went out of their way to hire Bruce Timm because they knew they would get some stupid ideas in there? Because J.J. Abrams does have a tendency to break everything that he gets his hands on.
I don't know that he hired Bruce Timm specifically to get stupid ideas. I think Bad Robot and J.J. Abrams are certainly capable of bringing enough stupid ideas to the table that they don't need anybody else to come in. But, who knows? Who knows? I mean, it just may be one of those things where Bruce Timm is in that position in Warner Brothers. And it was like, okay, if you're going to do this, you're going to do this with this guy. You don't really know the inner workings of how those things work out. But I think that, it's just a bad idea to have Bruce Timm in charge of anything. I don't think he really cares. I don't think he's really interested. If you've ever talked to him at a show, he's very unpleasant. He's always scowling. He doesn't seem to just genuinely like people at all, or be very happy in general. So I don't think that people that are radically unhappy ever end up producing art that is particularly satisfying to a wide audience.
But it also does make me think that David Zaslav has an eye for what will and won't work. Because I think once he saw what the Caped Crusader was, he's like, this shit ain't going on Max. And he pawned it off on frickin' Prime Video because they're just looking for stuff.
Yeah, why lose money when you can get paid for, you can get paid for the garbage that you would write off, and you could conceivably make more. He probably made more selling it off to Prime than he would have writing it off. Maybe contractually he couldn't write it off. But yeah, that's the way to go. Just take all this stuff and try to dump it and try to get it out there and make a little bit of your money back, and maybe turn a slight profit because, even if it is, like he said that the Batgirl movie was brand damaging, but yet they still released The Flash. So obviously there's contractual reasons that had to be released, or they had just dumped too much money in it to take a write-off on it. Who knows what the reasoning was, but the entire brand is damaged at this point. DC is damaged as a comic book company. It's damaged as an entertainment brand. Warner Brothers is really damaged. There's really nowhere to go but up.
Absolutely. These are some more words that came from Bruce Timm. James and I were talking about the overview of the show, and we said, one of the problems with Batman, as he is there's a lack of good villains. Tim recalled in an interview with the Emmys, you've got Catwoman, you've got Poison Ivy, you got Harley Quinn, but it would be really good to have more female villains. And on top of my head, I said, what if we gender flip the Penguin? And this is the dumbest conversation in the history of the world. We have Bruce Timm associated with Batman the Animated Series actually entertaining the idea that there aren't enough rogues in Batman's rogues gallery, the greatest rogues gallery in the history of the freaking world. If you just take the female characters, you got Catwoman, Harley, you got Poison Ivy, you got Talia al Ghul, Lady Shiva, you got Killer Frost. There are so many awesome female villains in the Batman's rogues gallery, and we're not even counting the Penguin, Joker, Riddler, Clayface, Bane, the most awesome rogues gallery in the history of the world to work with. And they're like, there's just nothing here to do.
Well, Harley Quinn, of course, has to be a hero now because she's LGBTQ, as does Poison Ivy. So, yeah, in that sense, they've already taken two big female villains off the table. But you still have, just from the animated series alone, you've got Red Claw, you've got Phantasm. Let's see, you named Lady Shiva, you named Killer Frost, Lady Clay, the Baby Doll. There's another female villain that you could.
There's a Lady Joker out there.
There's Duella Dent. But, you've got all kinds of female villains. And here's another idea. If you feel like you don't have enough, create some new ones. The Batman animated series didn't have any problem doing that. But I guess that one had Paul Dini, didn't it? So that you could get things that were created. Because Bruce Timm can't create anything. All he can do is gender flip the Penguin and go, oh, maybe she's in cabaret, for another one of his barely disguised fetishes. And if you want to talk about Bruce Timm's barely disguised fetishes, let's talk about the fact that the entire time that he was on Batman the Animated Series, many, many people have talked about how he had an obsession with making Bruce bang Barbara, the young teenage daughter of his best friend. And then eventually, when he got a chance to do it in the comics, he did it.
You know what I'm surprised they didn't do? Because there is a Batman female villain that is similar to Penguin that's never really been used in comic books or animation and stuff. I think it's a terrible character just because of the show, but fuck it, just use Fish Mooney, another character that is very similar to what they wanted to do anyway.
And there you go. Bring in the lady ventriloquist as a crime boss with Scarface. You can do that. Boom, done. Easy, an existing villain. You didn't have to gender swap anybody. You didn't have to do anything stupid. You just bring in the things that exist and do a new version of it. It's not that hard. It's not brain surgery. But apparently for Bruce Timm it is. Because without Paul Dini there to prop him up, he is not a creative.
No, and that's the worst part of the look of like this female Penguin, is it still just looks like the Penguin but with tits.
Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, look, good for. I mean, you accidentally gave a thumb up there on the video. It seems like you're in favor of Lady Penguin.
No,
but it's absolutely horrifying. This image of and God bless Minnie Driver for getting some work. I love Minnie Driver. I'm glad that she got a role. But I would have rather seen her as Lady Ventriloquist, as Killer Frost, as any of the other characters that we mentioned.
Absolutely, there's a ton of characters out there. Batman. The biggest problem Batman has nothing to do with his rogues gallery because it's fucking bulletproof. It's awesome. Male and female villains.
Best rogues gallery in comics.
Absolutely. Final words he said, when he said, maybe we can gender flip Penguin, I just got this flood of ideas. This is what Tucker said, who went on to outline some of his inspiration for bold reworking. I was thinking of Marlene Dietrich in her tuxedo in Cabaret the Musical and the art form of Cabaret and just started drawing. Also, I was thinking a little bit of Harvey Fierstein and Hairspray and Divine. It was just like I knew instantly what it could be. It's like when you hear what he was drawing on, you needed an adult in the room, a David Zaslav, overseeing this thing to be like, you just created the worst ideas ever in the history of Batman. We need to stop now before you move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would have been like, and it's not, and it didn't look like Marlene Dietrich in the tuxedo. It looked like Penguin in drag.
Yes.
So this flood of ideas that you had, which aren't very good, it's like, sometimes somebody mentions something to me and I get a flood of ideas about it. And then I go, oh, but those are really bad because it's starting out from a bad place. So any idea that I have isn't going to make it any better because the core idea sucks.
Yeah. So a lot of people out there will claim, Bruce Timm just as important to Batman the Animated Series. Driving force. Let's make Bruce Timm in charge of everything. No, let's not let Bruce Timm be in charge of anything. It's clear he's got terrible ideas. He's willing to execute those terrible ideas to an even worse level than the original idea. He has no self-restraint. He has no idea what people want to see. And he better thank his lucky stars that Paul Dini was around him to, shape the interpretation people had of him in the beginning. Because now that we're seeing who he really is, he's just killing his reputation worse and worse. People should be pissed off at this because it looks stupid and we don't get a lot of great Batman cartoons anymore.
All you need to know or all you need to do to figure this out is look at all of the things that Paul Dini has done without Bruce Timm and look at all of the things that Bruce Timm has done without Paul Dini. And when you look at those two columns, you will see who the talent was on that show.
Absolutely. And crazy stuff going on there. One of the worst looking characters in modern history. But I do think that Bruce Timm has exposed himself as not being the artistic or creative genius that people would like to give him the credit for. This is just a tiny part of the Geek Fix right here on Thinking Critical Patreon. It's going to be up on YouTube. But if you would like to see or hear the rest of the conversation in podcast form, we've got another 2 hours and 15 minutes to go. There's a link in the video description if you would like to support us there.